Hey everybody, welcome to the Buck Brief. Jeremy Carl is with us. He's a senior fellow at the Claremont Institute, author of The Unprotected Class. Jeremy, let's jump into it. Early voting, because the election's pretty much underway as we talk. What are you seeing? You're following it closely.
Yeah, I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing so far, and I want to be cautious because you can get a lot of these partisan accounts, and they'll always kind of give you the really good statistics, and they'll sort of gloss over things that don't look as good. But I'd say, particularly in places like Georgia and Pennsylvania, as best we can tell, certainly we're dramatically outperforming where we were with mail-in ballots, or in Georgia's case, early voting in the 2020 cycle, and that was a weird cycle, but also looking better than we did in 2022. And given that those were hair's breadth elections in both of those times, it's just going to take a couple points. So I think there's a lot of room for optimism, but no room for complacency.
Now, if you were to find an area of the campaign right now that you think is most in need of attention, the Trump campaign, that is. The Kamala campaign, yeah. I think the whole thing is in need of attention. I think so far, yeah. even honest Democrats realize this has been a disaster. But what on the Trump side of things, where are you hoping to see the numbers start to get a little better and things start to improve between now and Election Day, if that's possible?
Yeah, well, I still think, and I'm writing a piece on this right now, Trump is really struggling with white college-age educated Democrats, or rather voters who are leaning significantly for the Democrats. And given that, as I document in The Unprotected Class, I mean, the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris just yesterday basically calling for reparations in her talk with Charlemagne the God, the kind of influential African-American media personality, that they're pushing affirmative action, that they're pushing, kind of disparate impact things at the workplace. The fact that, given all that, and of course with immigration, that Trump is still struggling so much with that demographic, I just think he's making these appeals separately, but he hasn't sort of all tied it into a bow. And there's still a little bit of white voters being the demographic that dare not speak its name, and nobody else will speak their name either, and make an actual appeal, not in an irresponsible way, but just simply to say, hey, Kamala and the Democrats are not your friends. And, I'm going to look out for you in the same way that he has made his appeals to African-American voters, to Hispanic voters, to women voters. He's doing a town hall today, I think. And, I just think he could shore up there.
Jeremy, I don't know if you saw this. I was on the Bill Maher show, and the chosen topic was why Democrats have a problem with men and why Democrats are the sort of anti-masculine party. And when I tried to discuss it, do you know what the rest of the Democrats present wanted to talk? What their response was? How dare you not talk about women and minorities?
Yeah.
Like,
no, of course.
I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, so this is the situation, huh? So you can't. And it's also fascinating to me. You can have the I don't know, affinity group, whatever you want to call it. White guys for Harris is a thing, but I don't think anyone's allowed to have a white guys for Trump election group. That's not allowed.
No, of course not. And you're exactly right about men. And of course, the Harris campaign is having trouble with them for good reason, because her platform and everything that she's doing is frankly toxic to a lot of men out there. And you're seeing that across ethnic groups. But yes, you can't. The left will not allow you to speak about certain groups, or they won't even let you talk about the difference between married women who in general support Trump versus single women who overwhelmingly will support Harris, because that might reflect badly maybe on some of the choices that more liberal women are making.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there anything that Trump can do with college-educated white voters? I know that this is going to be, when you talk advanced degrees, you're overwhelmingly, unfortunately, talking, especially in the humanities, right? You're overwhelmingly talking about left-wing Democrats. That's no surprise. He's not going to win much there. But college educated is a very broad reality now, right? A lot of people go to a whole range of different colleges. Is Trump not doing as well as you think he could with that demographic? Is it just the cultural affinity of everybody who's gone, everyone with a university degree is hearing from all their university, buddies or professors, depends on how old we're talking about here, that, Trump is Hitler, and they just have to go along with that? Like, why? It would seem to me that the college educated demographic, particularly white college-educated voters, would see that Kamala Harris is a kind of a preposterous candidate. I mean, there's nothing
Right.
about this that should appeal to anybody who can do even the most basic analysis.
Well, that's certainly my view, and again, I think it just may be difficult for Trump personally to make that case, because if you look at this demographic, and I've been kind of going through all of this sort of nerdy survey data, and this is about 14 to 15% of the electorate, which is white college graduates who are self-described moderates. Okay, self-described liberals and conservatives are the most consistent voters in the entire electorate. If you're a self-described liberal white college graduate, and these are basically equal-sized groups, you vote for the Democrats. If you're a self-described conservative white college Democrat, these are both about 27% of the white college-educated vote. They all vote for Republicans. But that middle group, that 45% of white college-age folks is really, or graduate folks, is really up for grabs. And unfortunately, they have a very negative view of Trump personally, even though they don't necessarily maybe love some things about either party. It's one of the reasons I think that maybe J.D. Vance is the right person to make this argument for the campaign in the home stretch, because I think his entire affect, the way he presents himself, in the same way that Trump is kind of an avatar for a certain white working class voter, and they love him. I think Vance can do that a little bit for the college graduate voter, and so I think maybe he's the right person to kind of be making that argument down the stretch for the campaign.
Did you see Tim Walz with his I don't even know what a venture capitalist does. I just think it's interesting to watch the Democrats put forward somebody whose version of a normal, Midwest American guy, dad, whatever, is somebody who's like the bumbling buffoon dad on a sitcom. You know, that to me says something.
No, absolutely. I mean, continues to be a white minstrel show. He's a step and fetchet white guy for the 21st century. And the fact that he's doing things like bragging as a governor who could be a heartbeat for the presidency, that he doesn't even understand what one of the biggest engines of our economy is in venture capital, should be embarrassing and disqualifying. And again, I say that not because every one of your listeners or viewers here needs to know what venture capitalists do, but they're not about to step into the White House, right? We need like a certain standard of competence, and Waltz both just doesn't have it and almost revels in not having it. And it's an embarrassing view of people in general, but certainly white guys in particular.
I feel like you could run all these kind of fun spoof ads. It's like, yeah, vote for Tim Walz, because you need a guy who doesn't really know much as vice president. You know what I mean? You need a guy who's going to go there. He's going to just, he's going to be a guy who doesn't read, doesn't know stuff. And I can just imagine if you're a voter in particularly the Rust Belt states that are really up for grabs, Pennsylvania up into Wisconsin, you say to yourself, so this is what they think of us. It's like, oh, yeah, I can't handle the big words and the books. Vote Tim Walz.
It's true. And, it's really got to be painful to the Democrats as the so-called party of intellectuals that, truly, we all have our biases, right? But there's just simply no way that Trump and Vance are not by far the two smartest people of the four on these tickets. There is a significant IQ gap between these tickets, and the Democrats, for them to kind of be the party of the quote unquote so-called smart people, to be running two people as just intellectually unimpressive as Harris and Waltz, that just kind of has to stick in their craw in a really painful way, because certainly obviously Vance is brilliant, and I think Trump is he was frequently talks about him being high IQ, but I think he actually is very underrated. He's a very smart and capable guy. Whether or not people like him or dislike him, I don't think you can underestimate his actual intellectual ability.
I don't want to celebrate early. That's one of my mantras in life, because I've just seen how devastating that can be to people when you don't want to be the guy high stepping into the end zone and you get absolutely laid out and you fumble at the 2-yard line, right? So I get it. That's the rough one. The question I want to ask when we come back here is, what happens if Trump wins in terms of the Democrat response? All right, we want to get into that in a second. Across America, so-called strange accidents are becoming the new normal, and our sponsor, Stansberry Research, says that you need to know that this is part of a broader trend. 911 call centers going offline for hours at a time. You may have read that medical errors have increased dramatically since 2020. Most people understand there's something really wrong with this country. Infrastructure-wise, systemically, there are problems. The wheels are falling off. Learn what's really happening and why, and how you can prepare and how you can actually make smart decisions with your money regarding this at americadisaster.com. A massive new accident could be coming to the country. Stansberry Research wants to tell you what they see coming and what you need to do. Go to americadisaster.com. That's americadisaster.com. Paid for by Stansberry Research. Okay, so how do you see, like, let's just have, for the fun of conversation right now, but this will be great if we end up playing this after a Trump win and, you nail everything. So what do they do if Donald Trump wins this election handily? So it's not like dragged out over days. He wins the swing states. He's going to be the president. What do you see happening?
Well, I saw Mark Halperin, I think, sort of saying that this would be like the biggest mental health crisis in the history of America, because you take these Democrats, and by the way, again, I'm not being partisan here. This is all data driven. I mean, this is already a much more mentally unwell population by self description than Republicans, and you kind of add this stressor of Orange Hitler being in the White House, and I think a lot of these guys are just going to lose it. And I do worry also, of course, that we might have a January 6th type thing, but for real, not a fake insurrection like the one that the Democrats, took a rally that got out of hand with a couple hundred people, but like that the Democrats, might actually actively justify attempting to keep him, from assuming office. And certainly they've shown with their lawfare and everything else they've done with Trump that they really won't stop at anything. So it's going to be concerning. I don't think we can let our guard down, even if we get a great result on election night. That'll just be the first step.
You think riots though? Because I also, you have to go watch the Bill Maher episode I was on, because you'll see some of these things. It was actually a lot of fun for me, even though they were all hating on me. The audience did laugh at a few things that I said, but I pointed out that the 2020 election, this is never talked about anymore. I was living in New York at the time. There were preparations for the guaranteed mass riots if Donald Trump won, by businesses, by people who, this wasn't a political thing. It was, I need to board up my business on election day and have it so that they can't just, take everything, break the window, steal everything. Of course, we know what ended up happening. Donald Trump ended up not becoming president. But I feel like this time around, if Trump wins, it could be even crazier than that in some ways, because they've all been fed the insurrection narrative and the prosecutions of Trump and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely it's a risk. I do think that part of, again, my optimism about 2024 is I do think that in some ways, in their heart of hearts, some of the folks, even who do not like Trump, are kind of resigned to what is probably coming. And so there may be a little bit more of an attempt to restore order on those folks' part. But like the activist left is going to go absolutely nuts. And it'll be fascinating to kind of see how that's portrayed. Even in 2016, of course, we had this at Trump's inauguration, and it's sort of been memory hold. But the left's nuts; they're crazy. That's why we're in the situation we're in, and we need to just do everything we can to make sure that we win by the type of margin that will cause them to think twice before they do anything stupid.
You got to be prepared these days. There's crime, there's anarchy, things can happen on the streets. Our sponsor, Sabre, wants you to be ready. Sabre Pepper projectile launcher is the only 68 caliber launcher with a 7 projectile capacity, offering up to 40% more shots than other brands. Superior home defense, stopping power up to 175 feet. For nearly 50 years, Sabre has been dedicated to making the world safer. Trusted by law enforcement and millions of families, Sabre provides powerful, non-lethal protection both at home and on the go. The projectile launcher, I've trained with it. It's amazing. Great tool. A lot of you are 2A people, Second Amendment people. Great tool to add to your toolkit to have a non-lethal option. It's in addition to, right? I'm not saying in place of, in addition to whatever firearms you have for your own protection, your own use. Having a non-lethal is something you will really appreciate having on hand. Go to saberradio.com, S-A-B-R-E, saberradio.com, or call 844-824-SAFE. That's 844-824-SAFE. Jeremy, any predictions you want to make? This is great, too, because if you get it wrong, we'll just pretend like this never happened. But next time you're on for the election, if you get it right, any Senate races you want to call now or anything like that, just throwing it out there.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So I can feel great confidence because I live in Montana and have been following that race very, very closely. And in fact, go to church with Senator Dick, the NRSC. I won't repeat any conversations in confidence, but I just, we're up on that in the polls by 7 or 8 points in pretty much everything that's been out recently. And I think we're going to win that by at least that, in my view. I think Tester is going to lose.
Why is Tester? Why is Tester? He's the incumbent. Like why is he collapsing? Is it just his whole like I'm a maverick Democrat who likes cowboy boots? Like is that just not working this time?
That really is. I mean, a little bit. The New York Times likes to run these articles that says, "Oh, it's all these newcomers," and yeah, I mean that's certainly, that's a piece of it. But really, I think it's just his shtick as a moderate Democrat, which has almost become an oxymoron. It just doesn't work anymore. He's not. He has voted for every single one of the Democrats' radical judges and policies, and we've just been reminding Montana voters who are really quite conservative about that. We have a capable candidate in Tim Sheehy, and it's just the votes are just not going to be there for him. And I know that we're kind of excited about that. So I think we're going to win that Senate race, and I'm feeling pretty good about Ohio as well. And I think the NRSC just put out a poll showing us up in Wisconsin. And I think that one could well break for us. And look, if everything goes really right, it's not impossible we'd pick up 6 or 7 Senate seats this cycle. But I think at least we're going to pick up the 3 or so that at the kind of not worst case, but even in a not such a great scenario that are going to give us a comfortable Senate majority. And the reason why that would be important is even if, unfortunately, if we wound up unfortunate in the presidential race, Harris would really be blocked from doing much if we controlled the Senate and possibly the House. So we could really kind of, sort of keep that presidency from taking off. So I think a lot of reasons to be optimistic.
Jeremy Carl of the Claremont Institute and Unprotected Class is his book. Jeremy, great to have you on. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely, Buck. Pleasure to be on.